Nice to see so many familiar faces. MBA 2024, where are you? Right. Okay, guys, as I said just now, behave. All right. Okay. Also, of course, my own Gemba community. Welcome. All right. Okay, and also others who have taken your time to join us. Of course, I am always happy to see my old students, right? Mutu and Ellen, welcome back. I think I see you all only once a year, whenever you have this event. Okay, all right. So guys, I know many of you came for the free beer, right? Some of you came to see whether you can get some internship or jobs, right? But before you get either, you have to listen to ESG first. Okay, that's the condition. Okay, but really, I mean, I was very impressed when I heard Jan, you did the speech at the MBA opening ceremony, right? Graduation ceremony, and the way you kind of did your speech, you know, including the names of all our CEIBS alumni. I thought that was really good, right? So today, really, as Dean Yuan, this is in a sense, we call this, is this how you, no, I don't drink, yeah. So as the Dean mentioned just now, this is part of this series that we call Beyond Charity, right? Now, because when we talk about ESG, of course, charity is important, right? And you know that in China, in many parts of Asia, what most companies do is basically charity, right? As I said, in developing countries, charity is important, you know, as important as can be. But what we wanted to emphasize a little bit more is how do you make ESG into part of the organization, right? So I've always defined ESG, CSR, not as how you use your money, how you spend your money, but in my opinion, CSR is how you make your money, right? So when we are able to put in ESR, ESG into the DNA of the organization, then I believe you are talking ESG, right? And I think in the case of Budweiser, I see this motion, right? And that is why I told Christina that, you know, this is something that we got to include under this Beyond Charity series, all right? So yeah, what I want to do is I want to start off, this is not the list of questions I gave you.
Don't worry.
Yeah, right. Because one of the things that I always believe, and I think research also proves that, and that is a company that is engaged in CSR, ESG, very much depends on how the CEO drives ESG, right? If the CEO does not believe in CSR, then, you know, what the company does is just talk, right? It's greenwashing, whatever, right? So my first question to you, Jan, is what is your personal motivation that you are so religiously pursuing sustainability, you know, ESG, you know, as in a sense, you know, some kind of one of the most important goals that you have? What drives you as a person?
Thank you. So in a way, I'm very lucky because with our team, we run a big company, right? It's quite a big brewery. We sell a lot of beer, right? So, and of course, we are a performance-driven company. Like we want to achieve our dreams, we want to grow the company, we want to deliver financial results. But at the same time, I always found it a privilege that you can use the scale of our company to do good for communities. And it's actually not many people have that opportunity because you have many very bright people, they have excellent ideas, but they cannot scale them. And sometimes you have leaders of big organizations and they're just not very inspired by ESG. But if you have a team and an organization that allows you to put it into action, it's actually very motivating for myself, but I also see that with my team. I brought a number of colleagues here, and it's actually very exciting for me as well, is that you go in a certain direction. We identified 8 different priorities, And I don't need to actually do that much because the team is very excited themselves to push that forward and to come up with ideas to deliver, to benchmark, to open the gap, to drive results. And it's in many ways the same way we drive our company to financial results, the same mindset we also bring in ESG. We open a gap, we map an action plan, we benchmark, then we deliver results, and then we advance from there. So that's really the starting point for me. Is big company, which is very exciting in itself. We sell a lot of beer. We have 26,000 colleagues in Asia. We have 50 breweries in Asia. We sell like $7 billion of beer. But at the same time, you can use that scale to do something good and something positive. So that's what drives.
Yeah, and you're not answering my question.
I do.
What I was trying to get at is, what is that thing in you, right, that drives you to do what you do, right? I mean, in some cases, it could be your religion, right? It could be your upbringing, in the sense that your parents instilled into you this virtue of caring for others and so on, right? So personally, because I ask this because for most of our MBA students here, this is something that I discussed in class, right? In terms of, what kind of value, what kind of virtues do you have, right, to discover them, right? And I see you as a role model, for these guys, right? So I'm asking you, not forget your Budweiser for a bit, right? You as a person.
For me, since a child, I've always been very engaged with kind of the community around me. Like when I was maybe 14 years old, I started being kind of a leader in the, let's say, the youth movement around us, to take care of a group of children at the time. And then as I grew up, was kind of organizing the youth movement and kind of everything around it, like summer camps and, after school studies and these kind of things. And then kind of professionalize that to really make it something for the whole community. I come from a pretty small village, so it's like 30,000 people. I'm almost ashamed in Shanghai to say that, you probably call it like, I don't know, a community here, like a small one. But, in Belgium, it's quite big, 30,000 people. So, so I've always been very motivated and engaged to drive a difference for people that stays, not something that you kind of walk in and walk out, but to leave a footprint somewhere and do something that stays relevant for people there. And so I find that a lot in ESG, if you find topics in ESG that are very close to what you do as an organization, it actually helps you to leave a footprint and to really be able to say, with our team, with our people, we changed something. We made a movement and something changed for good.
The follow-up question is, how do you attract others to follow you in this direction? Are they attracted to you, or do you need to, find people who kind of fit these ideas that you have?
I think in our company is very natural. I think we kind of attract people who are very excited and kind of passionate about things. We are very kind of, we call that ownership, right? We recruit people on sense of ownership, that they really want to own something and deliver something and make a difference, even if they're part of a big organization. And so when you talk about sustainability, but also, we work on diversity and inclusion, we work on responsible drinking. These are topics that are very close to our team's hearts. And it's actually, I would say, the younger the people, the more like crazy they go for this. Like some people in our team, they are really I would say people that we hired maybe 20 years ago, they come for the business and then, maybe they have a personal motivation and, they end up doing something on ESG. Today, joining our company, the first question often is, what do you do for sustainability communities? Do you guys sell beer in recycled backpacks, or is it like one way? And like what happens with the plastic, and how do you deal with energy, and what is your footprint? And Like it becomes almost the first topic.
China, or you're talking about
worldwide? Worldwide, we see that around the world. That I think for younger consumers, but also colleagues, sustainability. Many people don't know what ESG stands for, but sustainability, everybody knows. You know, or when you talk about diversity and inclusion, it's very personal for people. You know, they think that is fair, and a company needs to do that because otherwise it's negative, and they don't want to be part of something negative. You know, some people even joining a company in the first place is already like, you know, should I be doing this? What do I want to do with my life, right? So if they can join a company that does good things, they actually want to. It's kind of the first thing, and then, oh yeah, I'm also going to make beer, sell beer, brew beer, etc. You know, so it becomes very intrinsic, the motivation.
I mean, I think that's actually nice to hear, that the younger generation have this other, you know, passion in life, rather than only making money that our generation, right, was focusing on. Now, you mentioned just now that there are a number of things that, you know, Budweiser does, right, in terms of the environment, in terms of responsible drinking and stuff like that. This is one question that I've been asking, you know, every CEO that I interview. Right, and because this bothers me, right? I'm always wondering, why is it called E, S, and then G, right? Why the environment first, then social, then governance? Maybe in a place like China, the G should come first, right? China or other developing countries, right? So how do you decide whether you should focus on the E, S, or the G? You know what I mean, right? I mean, because you are a beer company, what have you got to do with the environment? Shouldn't you be focusing on the social side?
So in a way, we're kind of fortunate that our product is very close to sustainability. So if you think about beer, beer is local, because typically we brew it in the local communities. Like we don't ship a lot of beer around in containers, right? We brew locally. The second is our beer is natural, because if you think about brewing, you basically, if you would put like a tub here and you would put barley in it, you would cook it, you know, you would put hops in it, that, you know, got very excited, nice singing. You know, and then you mix it with water and you put a yeast and you boil it, this thing will make beer. It's very natural. So there's nothing chemical. We don't need to add any chemicals to make beer. So it's very natural, right? And then it's inclusive as a product. You know, people toasting over a beer or, you know, having a beer together can break the ice, or can be, you know, relaxing, you know, or can be, you know, having fun together with friends. So it's a very inclusive drink, right? It's not very stiff. It's not very formal. So this category, if you think about what you need to brew beer, you know, you need water, you need energy, you need ingredients, right? And you need packaging to put the beer in. So when we talk about sustainability, these are the 4 commitments we took. We said, well, you know, we want to use less water. And if we brew beer in a community, after we finish brewing, there's going to be more water with higher quality available for that community than before we started brewing, right? Which sounds kind of crazy because you need water to brew beer. But we can do that, for example, in India, we do that by investing in stations that collect water, right? So if you go to the high-risk water scarce areas in India, there is a lot of infrastructure problems. Actually, in certain seasons of the year, there is enough rain, but there is no infrastructure to retain the rain. So we invest in this collection. It's kind of big infrastructure, right? And then we reduce the number of liters we need for 1 liter of beer. Like today, our best brewery around the world, so worldwide AB InBev has about 250 breweries. The best brewery is actually in Nanning in China. We use 1 liter 12, so 1.12 liter for 1 liter of beer. So in the 1.12, everything is in, right? So you need to wash your hands. That's included. So everything that goes into the brewery is into the 1.12. So the average in China is maybe 3-point-something liter. You know, average in the world is probably more than 4. So 1.12 is like really good. You know, to get there, you need to really specialize. So But then if you think about energy, it's about renewable electricity. It's about carbon footprint reduction. If you think about barley, we want to make sure that our farmers that we buy the barley from are financially better off and that they're, managing their company in a way that is sustainable. If you think about packaging, should be either returnable or recycled packaging. So we have very specific sustainability goals that we link to certain actions, and we commit to that. If you go to the S and the G, S is in a way very natural because we sell alcohol. Since 15 years in China, we started with a smart drinking campaign. And initially when we started this in China, my colleagues tell me that nobody understood why does a brewery do a smart drinking campaign? You guys want to sell more beer, right? Why would you tell people to drink in a moderated way? But then when you explain that actually we want every experience with beer to be a positive one, because that's the only way to be long-term in a community accepted as a brewer. After time, other companies started copying that, right? And we do it in ways that is very relevant for young drinkers, young adults. So we use, typically either celebrities, or we use very innovative approaches that we anchor. Like this year, we do it with Harbin Ice and FIFA World Cup. And we do a campaign that is like very much on trend, like consumers would want to see the contents, but at the same time, they get a message when they look at it, right? Next to that, in social, there's a lot of work we do on D&I, so on diversity and inclusion. And then in governance, there's a lot going on ethics and governance, right? Compliance practices, etc. So maybe to your first point, that is a big action point for us. And then maybe a last one that we are actually starting now is on entrepreneurship. Is how can we, back to this idea of we're a big company, but we want to have a positive impact on communities. When you think about it, how can we drive entrepreneurship of small and medium-sized enterprises? When you look, for example, if you look at China today, probably one of the biggest problems in the economy after 3 years of COVID is not the big companies. There are some big companies with trouble, but the biggest trouble is with the small and medium-sized enterprises. We actually sell beer to, let's say, 2 million customers, like not consumers, but retailers and stores, right? And we sell beer via 4,000 direct wholesalers and maybe up to 100,000 tier 2 wholesalers. So we really have interactions with many, many, many smaller companies. So we come up with programs on how to train them, how to make them financially viable, how to teach them management techniques, how can they professionalize their company. So for our bigger wholesalers, we even do succession programs. So we do a program that people that we know are closer to retirement and they have a child. Typically, the child is not interested to become a wholesaler because he only saw the bad side of the job, right? I mean, the father or the mother always comes home late, and there's parts of the business they actually don't like at all. And typically, if they worked with us for a long time, they don't really need the money, right? Because they made money selling beer. And so then we organize a succession program that we put 10, 15 wholesalers in a room, they're children, they're typically 25, 30 years old. And we talk about the business. And there is professors, we actually do it together with CEIBS. There's professors coming and they teach management techniques, etc. But they learn from each other. There is wholesalers who come and explain what they do. They discover things about the job of their mom or dad that they never realized, and they get intrigued. And our success rate is now above 80%, right? More than 80%, 87% of the people in the course who actually decide to become a successor of the business, which again, as often with ESG initiatives, is good for communities, but it's also good for our business, because what is good for us is that actually these most important partners, they have business continuity, right? Because imagine the father or the mother would retire and there is no successor. Well, we need to find a new wholesaler and develop the wholesaler, and typically they're quite big wholesalers, so it takes a lot of time. So
good for your business.
It's win-win. Yeah.
So what advice would you give to companies, to senior executives when it comes to prioritizing ES or G? What are some of the things that companies need to think about? I mean, in your case, it seems that you are everywhere because as a beer company, you have to be everywhere, right? But obviously, companies don't have that amount of resources to allocate into all three, right? So what should companies be thinking about?
So what we try to avoid is doing things that are not core to our business. So, for example, there is companies who collect a lot of money and they give it to like a general charity, and they end up giving it to many other companies and charitable initiatives, which we have nothing against the initiatives, but anybody can do it. It doesn't touch our business, doesn't touch the heart of our colleagues or our communities in a way that only we can do it, right? We focus more, if you look at a specific country, for example, India, we would look at what are the bigger problems in India. We would probably say from a sustainability point of view, number one is water. So we would focus a lot on water. If you look at China, for example, there is a big focus on carbon neutrality. So we invest a lot of time on how do we get our breweries carbon neutral? How do we work with our suppliers to make them carbon neutral so that by 2040, the whole supply chain is carbon neutral? And then there are certain themes that are just, we force them across the board, like diversity and inclusion. Some countries, this is an easy topic. Some countries, it is a difficult topic, right? But in every country, we force it to be a priority because we think as a premium beer, producer, we need to lead the way on certain trends that we know should be relevant or at least become relevant, at least for our target consumers, target communities, for the target people that we want to recruit. We know that these values are typically leading in society, so we want to make sure that this becomes something that people can talk about, that sometimes in a very creative way, we're going to make a topic discussable. Like, for example, this is the third year that we do a campaign with Budweiser in China about what we call the kissing bottle. I don't know if anybody saw that here. I'm not sure if it was in the video or not, but it is about the LGBTI topic, which we all know probably in China is a sensitive topic, but we think it's important. So we say, we're not judging anything positive or negative. We just say all love is, the campaign is called All Love is Love. And you can turn this bottle, there's a man and a woman, boy, girl on the bottle, and you can turn them in, and they're kissing, right? Kissing bottle. And you can turn them in any direction. And, you can decide who kisses whom and who is in love with who, right? So it's very subtle, but we do this campaign and it's quite big. We do it around Chinese Valentine's Day, and we bring the theme of love and how all love is love, so, but it's a very premium, subtle way. We activate it in social media. We do a lot of campaigns around it, but this is an example of something that even if a topic is today maybe difficult to discuss in certain countries, we still think it's important to do it, right? So then we make it a topic in society.
I let you all ask questions relating to this particular issue later when you have time to ask questions. Jan, I want to know a little bit more about this whole carbon neutrality, net zero thing. I mean, you mentioned just now about the usage of water and then the packaging and so on. The brewery that you have, I was looking at China Daily. This brewery in Wuhan, is it? It's the first to become net zero. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so Wuhan, so we have in China about 30 breweries. Wuhan is one of our 4 biggest breweries. It was actually the first brewery where Budweiser was brewed in China. So it's actually quite a big brewery. And the team actually took a challenge, right? When President Xi here said, well, we want to go carbon peak in 2030, carbon neutral by 2060. We said, well, what would it take for a brewery to go carbon neutral? Like, what do you need to do to be carbon neutral? And our supply team took that very seriously together with our procurement team. And they mapped every single element that is kind of causing carbon emissions. And they mapped ways on how to get it to zero. So probably the biggest thing in a brewery you need to do is go to biomass heaters, boilers, because we need a lot of heating to kind of heat, like increase the temperature, etc. So that is first. You go from gas or other boilers to biomass boilers. Then you need renewable energy. So you need to have, typically we have solar panels on the roofs of these breweries, and then we need a PPA, like an agreement that we can purchase electricity that is either solar or wind somewhere else in the same province, and then we put it on the grid and get it. But we also make all our vehicles electricity based, so EV vehicles. We change the cooling liquids that are carbon zero cooling liquids. So there's a lot of things that need to happen. And Wuhan was the first brewery last year around the world in the whole ABI network that got carbon neutral, the first one in the whole of China as well. So of any breweries in China. And actually this year we already have the number 2 in Jinzhou in Liaoning province. And we are looking probably in the next year, we'll probably have another 2 or 3 that will go carbon neutral.
Mm. Yeah, it's, it's interesting because now even for a school like ours, there's a push towards becoming carbon neutral, right? So, and again, I mean, what you're saying about actually looking at that whole process and trying to see, what are the areas that you can reduce that carbon footprint. That's great. I think in terms of, again, this whole idea of beyond charity is how others can learn from companies like yours, right? Where you're able to, do what you do. One of the things that I was wondering is that, I mean, you mentioned this just now. In China, in other developing countries, the standards might be different, right? So when you talk about this ESG, is this something that comes from the HQ, forcing the local subsidiaries to follow this particular strategy? Or is it the other way around, that these are kind of locally motivated ideas? Because I've always wondered that, which would work better.
It's interactive, I think, is the real answer. So ESG as a topic, so Budweiser APAC listed in Hong Kong in 2019. So we're an independent company with just the APAC scope, right? And our parent company is AB InBev, is the biggest brewer in the world. And they basically still have 87% of our shares, 87, and we have 13%, 13% free float. So AB InBev is the kind of mother company. When we did the IPO, it was actually interesting because we've been doing sustainability initiatives in several years and like smart drinking since 15 years, etc. But we were always in the external reporting. There is a lot of agencies that kind of measure progress of different companies against standards. Like MSCI is a famous one, CDP. We work with many different ones. But it's the first time since the IPO that we were measured separately as a company. There was actually one of these positive side effects that we never thought about when we did the IPO. But all of a sudden these agencies approach you and they go like, well, when we listed, we're like $45 billion market cap. So we're a big company on the Hong Kong exchange. And they go like, well, you guys are big enough to have your own report. We're like, oh, it's great. And then said, if you guys disclose all your kind of KPIs and everything you feel comfortable disclosing, we'll give you a score. They scored us and we were like double B. We were like double B, and AB InBev is double A. So you go from double B to triple B to single A to double A, and the highest you can get is triple A. And I remember the team was quite upset actually, because we were like, what? Double B. And so we asked, why are we double B? And they said, well, A.
It's like being number 17 in the ranking.
Yeah. And we're not used to that, like our team doesn't want to be number 17, And we were like, how can this happen? And they said, well, actually, any company that starts as a freshly listed company, we start as a double B. Because you need to earn your way up. You cannot just come in and assume.
The improvements that you make.
Yeah. And actually, they want to see consistency in your KPIs and your reports. Because maybe you got lucky one year, they give you a triple A, and the next year a triple B, because then you're out of luck. So they want to see consistent improvements. So since then, so first, this is a board level topic. Then we have what we call a PMO, so project management office with we have 25 people in there. Linda is in there. For my direct reports, there is 6 direct reports in the PMO. And then they have in their team several people as well. There are experts. They are each responsible for a different field. So you have Linda is leading the people function. She's there. And Laura will be there to talk about diversity and inclusion. because she's leading that. But then, my VP Sustainability and Procurement is there, and his team will lead carbon neutral, they will lead returnable packaging, they will lead water, et cetera, et cetera. So there's different fields there that cover each of these 8 priorities. And so they then come up with the initiatives to drive actions. What is interesting with the MSCI report is we like all the agencies, but the MSCI, what is nice is that they give you a report and they tell you for each KPI, this is how important it is, and this is the score we give you and the potential score you can get if you do this. That's really cool, because we actually use it to open the gap. We say, well, we score on whatever water, we score 31 out of 40. And these are the points we need to improve to get 40, so, and in many cases, we actually know our KPIs versus all the other regions in ABI. And ABI is a AA. So we go we know Asia is actually better than any other zone on most of the supply chain KPIs. We just have an amazing team. And so we know, and it's very mathematical, right? Like if we have Nanning Brewery at 1.12 liter per liter of beer, we know we should be number 1 around the world, right? Because we know we're number 1. So then it's a matter of disclosing it. On some other fronts, it's a matter of putting certain actions in place. Some other fronts, it's taking decisions, on changing something. And then you report it and then they pick it up. So since the IPO, we started at BB. Every year we gained 1 notch. So 2019, we're BB, 2020, BBB, then single A, now we're AA. And actually the target for the team is to be AAA. So, and actually the team said, what we have our dream, right? Our dream is to be the most loved, high quality growth leader in beverages. And in most loved, the way we measure that is our ESG achievements. And so we like dreams to be measurable. So we said, well, ESG rating of MSCI is going to be the KPI to measure our dream, the progress towards our dream. So in our dream KPI, we said AAA is the North Star. So, and then actually we are target driven, right? So, for example, Linda in her individual targets next year, she will have AAA achievements of MSCI ESG. If we don't achieve it, it's almost unfair to give that as a target because we don't control. But then if we don't get to AAA, she will get a partial achievement if the means, like the initiatives within the people function, delivered the gap closing to get there. You see, so that's the way we make sure that, this is top of the agenda for senior management, for Linda's team, that they take the actions, but also that we can measure progress. It's not like tree hugging and, feeling good about something. It's about making real progress.
At the end of the day, how does ESG help you?
So I think,
you can get this 3, AAA and so on. But at the end of the day, does Linda get a bonus at the end of the day if she?
Yeah, she will. She will, but that's not a real driver because you can reach your targets on different targets, right? I think really, why do we do this AAA? Because we know to get to a AAA, we must be best in class in the most relevant fields in ESG, as judged by the MSCI, which is one of the most professional agencies that works in this front. Now, if they say that you deserve a AAA, like you really deserve a AAA, because they compare thousands of companies, they track them, is their job, right? And, this is something I think that is very objective. But then what do you get out of it? I think it's more about some of the initiatives we do will lead to cost savings. Because if, for example, we work with our suppliers to help them to be carbon neutral. That's actually more difficult than deciding ourselves how we want to be carbon neutral. Like if you look at our full carbon emissions value chain, not many companies calculate it, but our team calculated it. We have 9% of, like you have scope 1, 2, 3. I don't know if you guys know a lot of this or not. So if you want to get carbon neutral, carbon emissions, you have scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. Scope 1 is what you control. It's within your walls, right? So you burn a boiler to get heat. Well, that is scope 1, it's your activity. Scope 2 is you buy energy, but to create the energy, somebody is doing something that is causing carbon emissions. That's scope 2. Scope 3 is you buy products or you sell products and they are causing carbon emissions, right? Like I put my beer in a fridge. Well, the fridge is causing carbon emissions. You can measure that. Or I buy barley from a farmer. Well, the farmer is causing carbon emissions to create the barley. So all of that is one carbon emission value chain. Our scope 1 and 2 is 9% of the total carbon emissions. So 91% is outside of our control, direct control, right? So, and that would actually be true for most companies, right? Because, if you think about where is carbon emission like created, like it's not necessarily in the activities of the companies that you would know yourself. It's more like basic, basic industries, etc. Farming, steel, energy production, they're the big emitters, right? So we need to work with our suppliers to help them to become carbon neutral. That's how we can drive. We took a target, maybe kind of crazy, but we said we want to be full value chain carbon neutral by 2040, which is only 18 years to go, right? It's not that much actually. Because we reduced our carbon emissions of our scope 1 and 2 by 45% in the last 4 years. So, we can really drive a lot of action when we focus on something. But to do all the other suppliers and wholesalers and customers to do that takes a lot more effort. So, for example, we have one supplier that makes the bottles, right? So the glass bottles. And we work with this supplier, Huaxing, is our biggest glass supplier in China. And we worked with them and we said, well, why don't you guys put solar panels on your production facilities? And we will help you buy the solar panels because we buy a lot of them, So they could purchase them for a good price. We also calculated for them, if you do your own solar panels, what cost saving do you get? Because they actually drive cost savings. And then for us, we actually get not only the carbon neutral benefits, but we also negotiate with the supplier. Well, if you have cost savings, can we share some of them? Because we help you purchase the solar panels at a lower price. So it's really a win-win-win, And so if you're creative with a team and they really spend time on it, they most of the time can find solutions that save money for the company and are good for the environment. It's not the or. We call that the game of the and, not the or, You need to do both. You don't need to pick one, right? So that is on the economic front where you get out of it. I think on the consumer front, we use a lot of our brands to bring messages to consumers, and we sell premium products, premium beers. So our target consumers actually look for these values, so they get more positive about our brands as well when we do it. When we want to hire good students, typically good students care about the environment, so we can attract better talents as well to the company. So there is many other benefits to this.
Right. Thank you, Jan. Okay. I was told to open this up to the floor, yes?
Yes, and a little surprise. Yes, for people who are asking the questions, oh, Shamin, Professor, we will. Yes.
Now you made us shy.
You heard that, right? If you ask intelligent question, you get this duck.
Goose.
Right? Goose.
Goose.
It looks like a duck. It quacks like a duck. It's a duck. Okay, Shamin.
So this was just fantastic to listen to this dialogue. Thank you very much. 2 years ago, I attended this event. I'd just become the MBA director the month before. So I was still a little shy and diffident, and I sat right at the back. But I asked the first question that time too. And Linda, after I'd asked the question, turned to our CDC director and said, please ask that student to apply for sure. I may still need a job.
Linda is a sharp eye for talent.
I wanted to be the first to ask a question. But actually, the question I asked 2 years ago was based on the fact that many companies, including yours, were grappling with digitalization. And I'd heard this example about how your company had worked with a startup in Shanghai to leverage digital. It seems to me now that sustainability is this other big disruptive sort of factor that many companies are grappling with. And it's wonderful to hear how AB InBev seems to, and the APAC division in particular, is doing so much in a very coherent way, and in this both and approach of, you address this, but you at the same time do things that are good for business. So I'm curious about how your thoughts about how you are dealing with companies, right? So you do the beer. So clearly you work with other companies that help you to achieve these sustainability goals, for whom that is their main core competence, right? Whether it's building solar panels or doing other stuff that helps you to reduce the carbon footprint. And Yuan mentioned in the beginning, you're a bit like us. You have this European side, you have the Chinese side. I'm very curious about your impressions about companies you are engaging with. On the European ones and the Chinese ones, what do you see as their relative strengths?
Interesting question. Thank you. I think maybe one thing that is interesting to mention on this front is that I think probably 3 or 4 years ago, we started with an initiative we called the Sustainability Accelerator. And we invite, it's like a big pitch. So we invite any company, we do this one in China, for example, we also do in Korea and in India, so in each of our 3 main countries in Asia. And we invite smaller companies to come with ideas and say, what are you guys working on? And how do you think it can help us on? These are our 8 priorities. They're public, right? The 8 that I named on ESG. On each of these priorities, just tell us what you're working on. Can you help us on make progress on these 8? Because we have pretty smart teams and passionate teams, but we don't have all the ideas. Like we need to, there is other people with very good ideas as well, and why not leverage them? And so our value proposition is that if we like it, we'll try your idea. If it works, we'll scale it and we'll even promote it. That's kind of the idea behind it, right? So we actually get quite some companies interested. Every year we have like 40, 50 different companies that in the end we pitch, or that pitch us in a way, right? And let me give you one example that I really like. In Fossan Brewery, we have solar panels on the roof, and we have the EV trucks, like the electric vehicles. But then the sun doesn't shine necessarily when the trucks need to be charged, and the grid does not necessarily accept the electricity of the solar panel on the grids. And then sometimes we need to brew beer and the sun does not shine. So how do you close the loop? And so these guys came with an idea, was a local Chinese company, and they said, well, we actually, they were like AI guys, like they developed an algorithm, and they had this crazy idea, but it actually works. They said, well, there are these big EV trucks and cars, but these batteries in these cars, they get thrown away when the battery is no longer strong enough to generate the starting ignition. So if you think about it, the battery is actually still good, but you need to get to a peak charge to get the truck to start. When that doesn't happen anymore, they just throw away the battery, right? That's how it happens in real life, right? So what these guys did is that they collected all these batteries and they put them in these big containers. Like it's physically, like in Fossam Brewery, you have like 4 of these very big shipping containers full with EV batteries. And then what they did with this algorithm is that they connect all these batteries on kind of a hub, and the algorithm measures how much electricity should go to which battery to have an optimal charging and saving of the solar energy, basically. And then, of course, the battery releases the energy when we need it. And so what is interesting is that actually now we have a fully closed loop. So these guys came and said, we can close your loop, because you drive the truck, you can use the battery of the truck when it doesn't work anymore, put it in our container, the solar panel will charge the battery and charge the truck again. So, and for us, so A, was brilliant, B, it works, which is really great, but C, it helps us with significant cost saving, because we can now actually use the solar energy 100% of the time, and so it improves the ROI of the solar panels quite a lot. And of course, once you do the investment, that energy is free, right? Once you invest, it's done. So the more you can use it, the better ROI, right? So it's just one example of how we use this type of companies to really help us to come with new ideas and help us on our journey to close a gap, basically, right?
Right. Okay. Angelina.
Did he deserve a prize or not, Professor? Because given you put the criteria.
Can I have a goose?
Bottle opener.
Okay, Angelina, which one you want first?
Can I have the big two there?
Greedy.
Oh, ambitious, ambitious.
Craps and Professor Bala for the very interesting discussion. And on behalf of the Social Impact, CEIBS Social Impact and Responsibility Club, it's also our great honor to co-organize this event. Thank you to the coordination. I'm Angelina, and before MBA, I worked in the United Nations institution focused on the impact investment and green technology. And I have been always noticed Budweiser have been doing a great job in aligning with the UN's 2030 agenda of sustainable development goals. And Budweiser has come up with your own 2025 sustainability goals. Like Mr. Craps has mentioned, the smart drinking goals, the water stewardship, and like the circular packaging, you name it. So I'm really curious about how the Budweiser has carried out these goals in real actions and how you map the value chains in alignment with the UN SDGs. Thank you.
Very good. So we actually like the official frameworks and the official initiatives because they're typically very well thought through on what we should focus on. And we can really contribute to achieve the SDGs by doing what we do, right? So we use them as a kind of a North Star. It's a nice goose, right? We use them as a North Star and we really contribute to them. Another example is, for example, the 1.5 degree scientific-based goals, right? So SBTs, scientific-based targets, I guess. We also, our initiatives are in that framework as well, so that we can really achieve certain goals that are set on a broader basis, not just within our company. So when we fix these 4 sustainability goals, all of them are like with 100% by 25. So each of them has a different kind of KPI, but we want to reach 100% by 2025. Each of them has a different way of getting there. So for example, when we said we want to have 100% of our small farmers financially enabled, empowered, and with the right management techniques, you know, for example, in India is a good example. India, we went to, the area of India is very famous for barley growing. And we went there and we hired agronomists, so people who are professional in growing barley and this kind of thing. And we actually, in some parts of the world, we do what we call verticalized operations. So in some parts of the world, we would integrate a supply chain. So in some countries, we actually grow our own barley on big scale, or we have our own hops farms, like actually the one that we have in Shanghai. Is a smaller one. What is special there is it's in a greenhouse, right? Which makes it's actually the first one we do worldwide here, because we were thinking, how do we do hops in China? It doesn't really work. We say if we do it in a greenhouse, maybe it works, and it turns out it works. And then it's actually very efficient to do it, less water, less energy. And we can do 4 times a harvest per year instead of once, right? So it actually is quite interesting. But so when we went to that part of India with the agronomists, we also worked with these verticalized operations to find the best seeds, because actually the seed is actually one of the most important things to have the good productivity of the barley. Like if you don't have the right seeds that we can use to brew beer, because you cannot brew beer with any barley. It needs to be specific types of barley, because you need to have enough starch and like sugar, let's say, in there so that the yeast can transform the sugar in alcohol, right, and CO2. So it's quite specific what type of barley we need. So we imported specific yeasts, barley seeds tailored to the ground, to the soil of that area of India. And then we work now is already with about 3,000 farmers in India in that region. And we commit, if you use our seeds, you use our irrigation techniques, because that's also another topic that typically is less professional, then we will guarantee that we buy all of the barley that you make. You know, so they have the guarantee. If they do it, we will buy. And then sometimes you have a good season, sometimes you have a bad season. Sometimes we make money on this because it's good to have local barley. Sometimes we don't make money because it was a poor crop. But you know, for them, they actually grow a business and they become a really kind of professional farmer, and they can provide for their family. For us, we actually prefer local barley because we don't need to import it. We don't need to ship it around the world. We have the right type of barley in the place where we need it to brew beer. So, and it's typically cheaper if you count everything, it actually comes down to a cheaper cost. It just takes a lot more effort to get it, right? So it's one of these examples where we take an SDG, right? Even in China, right? One of the government priorities, rural revitalization, right? So how do we bring the economy kind of to the right level in the rural areas of China? A lot of development in big cities, not that much development in rural areas. So in China, we also started this initiative several years ago, and in Jiangsu province, actually, we have also about 2,000 or 3,000 farmers that we work with to make barley here in China. Because in China, actually, a lot of the barley is imported from many different countries, you know, not because China cannot grow barley, but actually, you know, the government used to prioritize other crops because of food supply security, right? Because, you know, you need soybeans, you need rice, you need, you know, wheat. You don't necessarily need that much barley for population in China. So we stimulate farmers to start to grow barley because actually we need barley and we really want to pay for barley because now we need to import it from everywhere, not just us, any brewer in China, right? So, and then we also went to the Alcohol Association and we said, well, this is kind of crazy, you know, if, like, you know, that in several years ago, there was this, actually still today, the trade tariffs between China and Australia. And so the barley actually got a very big trade tariff to reduce the imports of barley into China. So, you know, it's okay because we can buy barley from Canada, from Europe, from Argentina, from anywhere around the world. But you don't want to have 2 or 3 countries that get trade tariffs on barley because you guys would not be drinking beer anymore here, right? Because, you know, people drink beer in China. It's the biggest beer market in the world, China, right? So if you can no longer import barley at the right price, it will really become difficult. So we said strategically, it's actually even more important to localize barley production. And so you again see that in our strategic priority, it is important because we want to have a more reliable supply chain at a lower cost because it's local. We stimulate rural revitalization. So the farmers are happy because they have a crop that they can get guaranteed to get money for. And the government is actually also happy because it plays straight in the agenda that what they want to achieve, right? Rural revitalization. So there are many of these examples that if you look at the SDGs, you can actually do it in a way that is a win-win for everybody if you think about it a lot, you know.
Okay, great. Will.
Hi, thank you so much for coming here today to talk to us. So I wanted to ask about how you view carbon offsets, because obviously you've worked really hard to achieve carbon neutrality in your factories. And do you think the companies that are pursuing carbon offsets are genuinely pursuing carbon neutrality, or are they just taking advantage of the climate of the popularity around ESG and to provide the image that they're carbon neutral?
Yeah, so we don't buy. So again, I don't know what other companies do, and they have the right to do whatever they do. For our company, we don't use carbon offsets. So we do the hard way, if you want, right? So it's a little bit more difficult, takes more time, takes a lot of energy. But we don't buy carbon offsets. So it's not easy because actually, for example, if you want to do solar panels, like for example, we say we want to buy 100% renewable electricity in the country that we brew, right? So I cannot buy it in, let's say, in the middle of Africa where there's a lot of sun and then say, oh, I traded solar energy there and I'm going to buy normal electricity here and it's offset. Even that we don't do because that's technically not a carbon offset because we actually do create additional renewable energy. But we take the commitment to do it in the country where we brew, which is actually very difficult not because in China there is not enough sun, but because the state grids at the provincial level is actually not always developed yet to accept renewable electricity on the grid. And it's actually quite recent. We were actually very happy that the president here decided to do the 30-60 goal, because it really created a lot of momentum in both government and society. Because when he said we want to be carbon peak in 2030, carbon neutral in 2060, it actually made everybody move, right? A different pace because different provinces have different problems. It's actually not easy to have a traditional grid that is used to a very steady electricity supply, you know, either a nuclear plant or gas plants or coal plants is very steady. If you change that by a lot of wind turbines and solar panels, and sometimes the wind blows and sometimes the sun shines and it's very volatile, it's very difficult to reprogram your state grids to actually accept that. So I'm not blaming, it's really difficult, but it takes time. But for example, we need them to allow us to do PPAs, because if we put all our breweries full of solar panels, maybe we can cover 20% of our need of electricity. We just don't have enough space, you know. So we need PPAs to be able to invest within China in solar panels or wind turbines or water energy, so that we can actually buy the electricity in the same province, and then we can say that we are RE100. So that's kind of the approach we take. It's a little bit more difficult, but we think it has more impact on communities. But I think, does he deserve a prize? Or?
Will, I don't know.
Coming. Will, it's coming, Will. And we have time for one more question.
Can we have two, please?
2 questions.
Lynn.
I will try to answer quicker.
Lynn, can you use the microphone there?
Maybe you can do one, so we have one more person to.
Okay,
otherwise, you get 2 prizes. So.
okay, but you can. Okay, yeah, just one question then. Mine is more of a broader picture question. So, what are some of the best practices do you feel that China can learn from Europe when it comes to ESG, and vice versa, Europe from China? I'm going to just also ask a second question, but it's up to you if you want to answer, if you have time. It's more from a business environment, operating environment, I should say. What is Budweiser's, what's the biggest risk Budweiser would be facing in China from an operating environment-wise in the near to medium term?
So let me pick the first one, because you allow me to choose, right? I'll pick the easy one. I think what can Europe learn from China and vice versa? I think Europe can learn from China the speed, the scale, the innovation. I think when China says they're going to do something, they do it, and goes quick, goes like at scale, and is very innovative typically. And like people totally underestimate, I think, what happens in China sometimes, because like the solutions they bring are really creative, are well researched, are real solutions. So you see it in certain industries, right? When China says we're going to make solar panels, they make solar panels, you know. And today, I don't know, 70% of the whole world solar. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong with the number, but it's a very high number of all the solar panels in the world are produced in China. But so I think that is something that really helps. I think what can China learn from Europe? Europe started earlier on the journey. So there is a lot of expertise in Europe on how to do this. Very refined legislation, very developed, regulation and quality standards, very advanced. So I think it's not always easy. If you say, for example, you want to go carbon neutral, and I say, supplier, are you carbon neutral? The supplier can give you 10 different answers, they're all right. Because there is no standards, and there is no agency that measures, and there is no regulation. And you can measure different, like, you know, if I tell you I make glass bottles and I tell you my carbon emission is 1,000 and the other supplier says it's 500, maybe they're both right because they measure it with a different device and the device is not standardized. So this type of thing, I think, is normal because the ambition is just set like 2 years ago, right? So it takes time to develop that. And I know the government is working on that, but it's really important that it happens. And I think on that front, other economies or other kind of countries are just more advanced because they started longer time ago.
Okay, I want to call for those who are not from MBA.
Yeah, you can pick a prize here if you want.
Right at the back there.
Hi, good evening, Professor Bala and Mr. Jan. Yeah, so I'm just going to cut my question real quick. I believe most of the people are expecting a second round of beers and so on.
Ask your question first.
So, how do you expect going to bring this sexy word of AI out? How do you expect AI to help ESG on its way to become a strategic priority?
AI in artificial intelligence?
Yeah, machine learning.
So let me try to do the short version. We do digitization on, let's say, 3 main different fronts. One is consumer, one is customer, so sales, and one is supply chain. If you think about ESG, actually all 3 fronts could be relevant, but supply chain is probably the most direct impact on the sustainability goals. What we do is that if you go like 5 years back, all of our breweries would have many different like big devices, and they're not connected. All of them have a lot of data, but they're not connected, they're not harmonized. And so we spend like 2 years just connect what we call a connected brewery. It's what it says, right? We connect the brewery. So we basically connect the devices, we capture all the data, and we bring that into a big data warehouse. What we did this year is what we call smart brewery. We're not very creative with names, right? But a smart brewery is a smart brewery. So we actually start using the data to put algorithms on it, because now we are in a phase that we can actually read the data across all of our 30 breweries in China, and we can compare data across breweries. And you can imagine that now this year we started with building algorithms on that data. And that gets quite interesting, because then you can look at which brewery is better in steam reduction, for example. Why are they better? Well, let's look at the data of the different machines. Which is a standard brewery, like which should be the benchmark? How do we implement that standard in all of the other 29 breweries to reduce steam production, right, or steam usage? So these are ways that you can drive these sustainability goals by using technology in your advantage. And over time, we expect that these algorithms can run the breweries better than humans can. And they actually already can. Just you need to make sure the algorithm works before you do it, because they're big breweries. But like we're on that path, and the breweries can run more efficiently if we use algorithms in the right way.
Okay. All right. I think time is up. So guys, I think, it's fascinating. Listen to Jan, right? And you can see that, when we talk about ESG, it requires us to think outside the box, right? So reaching 2030, 2050 really looks very possible if we're able to think outside the box and find solutions, because I think solutions are there. It's a matter of just figuring this out, right? So really, Jan, thank you so much for this chat. I would want to work for Budweiser, right?